Howdy, howdy, hey. Welcome back to ABTG, the only channel on the internet where we try to figure out whether TV shows or movies are absolute bullshit, true greatness, or something somewhere in between. We have a very effective rating system. I don't have it up on screen at the moment, but you can check out the channel. If you click on the channel, then it's the banner. It's up there. You can see it. I am joined today by PJ. How you doing?
I am good. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about the Mandalorian. Oh no, sorry. We're going to be talking about
The Luke
the Book
Skywalker
of
show?
the Luke Skywalker show. Okay, so big spoilers ahead, but we're talking about the Book of Boba Fett, season 1, because apparently this is the first season. I don't know how many seasons they intend on doing for all of these Star Wars live action shows, but yes, this is one of the new live action shows on Disney Plus. Plenty of spoilers ahead, so do be careful if you don't want to, be spoiled by that. Although I feel like most of the big things from The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett are online already and have been since like day one. But yeah,
Are you sure when exactly, how long after Return of the Jedi this takes place?
I do not know. Am I supposed to know exactly when this takes place?
Because it seems to me, the flashbacks show him still in the Sarlacc monster.
Yes. Yes.
And from that time to the time he's with the Tuskens to the time he's in season 2 of The Mandalorian and the present events in the show, it
Mm-hmm.
can't be more than a couple of years.
Okay. So you don't think it's like 20 years that aged
Oh
them this
Jesus, no!
much?
Oh no! My impression was the Mandalorian and Boba Fett are like very close to Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
It seems that way, and
Okay. I'm trying to look at these. There's no official like Star Wars timeline out there. Is there like an official one?
so the structure of the show, for one thing, it the first 3 or 4 episodes are all present day flashback, and the frustrating thing about that is when you watched it weekly, you didn't know how much of which you were getting. You didn't know if the Tusken flashbacks how they would tie into the present day story, which they kind of do because it all involves basically the Pike Syndicate and the Spice, and we got
Hmm.
to stop them. And you kind of realize throughout the course of the show that you're not clear on Boba Fett's motivation, and it seems like it's personal, but he's not like too angry about anything. He's kind of like docile, and Fennec is really the one I was thinking throughout the show. I'm like, Fennec should be the leader. Boba Fett would be a great like second, you know what I mean, in command. It's strange. Were you frustrated with the flashback stuff?
No, I quite enjoyed them. Well, I mean, I guess I'm kind of over the idea of like like the narrative of the show. How should I say this? Shows that do that kind of frustrate me sometimes, and this is entirely the fault of Arrow because I thought it was a fun gimmick in like Arrow season 1 to flash back to like on the island. And then as the seasons progressed, it became more and more like a crutch. And then it became like an excuse to give him like new powers, or like, oh, he can do this. And then they just introduced it like one episode or in the same episode on the island. Oh, look, he did this. And so I thought that they were going to do this for like the whole season. But considering they only did it for like the beginning, it didn't bother me. And also, I think that everything in the flashback scenes, like, that's way better than anything else on the show. And I know that's very mean, but I think that like all of the Boba Fett related stuff, it's the flashbacks that work the best. And considering they're not true flashbacks, they're like dream sequences of his, or like latent memories that he's having, I guess. That kind of justifies his like physical appearance, like how he's aged. Um, and maybe that can even like leave some wiggle room if they want to change details and like in what happened as
Well,
well.
after the Sarlacc pit, he has scars that take years to heal. Because I just looked it up. Five
Okay.
years. Mandalorian takes place 5 years. So if you, let's say it can't be so long. I mean, if he's in there for a month, he's dead. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
let's just say it's less than a week he's in there
Mm.
and he gets out. So that means from the the flashback stuff to present day is about 5 years. So he spent, we don't see every year of it, but he spent a lot of time with the Tuscans. And
Oh
it
yeah.
seems the way it plays out in the show, it doesn't seem as long as it should. But I mean, you know, uh, the second time when I rewatched the show, I did it in chronological order, which takes a bit of messing around, but it played a bit better. But I understand why they switched it up, because what are you going to do at one point? Recreate the events of Mandalorian season two? It would be redundant. So I guess that's why they structured it in that way. But it's wonky. It's all over the place. It's
How
not a
did you
good
play it?
weekly watch, but it's a
How
good.
did you play it in chronological order? Were you like pausing episodes in the middle and then watching another one or something?
Actually, the easiest way to do it was on my TV. I was watching it, and what I would do, I would go into my phone and queue it up on the phone, and then just like refresh and go into the episode that way. So it's, but it
Okay.
it plays like a movie with the an hour and some odd minutes of backstory, and then I don't know how long, I didn't time it, but uh, the backstory is a lot. I mean, and
Well, there's
it's
only
weird when,
7 episodes total.
yeah, it's strange when you're watching it though, because weekly, because you get a little frustrated with, because okay, for example, the flashback stuff in episode 2 with the train heist,
Mhm.
like that was the highlight, that was the peak of that for me, and then everything after it was like, all right, let's move on. I want to get to present day, and there wasn't enough of that. And as soon as we get over the flashbacks, what happens is you get a really good Mandalorian season 3 episode. So I mean, I no complaints, but I mean, it was weird, but it was satisfying. And then the next one is all Luke and Grogu, and it's like, okay, sure. I mean,
Well,
it's not what I was expecting or wanted, but I don't mind it.
very early on, like with these first 3 episodes, I think by the second episode, you're having so much of these, like, we're gonna call them flashbacks, even though they're not technically. Anyway, by the second episode,
It's a wonky plot
it's a
device, because
it's a
technically he's
wonky,
dreaming, but
yeah,
they are matter of fact
the
flashbacks.
flash dreams or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, it's a bit wonky, but anyway, by the second episode, like you very clearly, you're like, okay, they don't have enough present day story to tell.
Yeah,
Like that's the feeling that I got. I didn't get like they were trying. Like there was a part of me that was like, okay, they want to explain like how he got from one point to another, and I guess they kind of tied it in the end, where they referenced those events and they talked about like his connection to the people in the desert. But in the beginning, you're kind of like, oh, they rushed this thing out. They don't have enough story, because ultimately the present day story is like, I don't know, like a street fight. It's like two rival gangs going at each other, and you're like, they don't have enough to say. And then that gets even worse when they interject like a Mandalorian episode in there. It was like, it's a good episode, but it's an episode of the Mandalorian, and I can't even fathom how they decided to put that in this show. Like, it's not even like it's connected to Boba Fett in any way. Like it's Finnick at the end that comes and sees it. It's so bizarre. And then I'm gonna be even meaner. From the point where the Mandalorian, where like Mando becomes part of the show, he almost steals the thunder. Because I know
yeah.
they try to give them like team fights, and they try to have them work together. But like every time Mando's on screen, you're like, he's the main. And I guess it's because you're kind of hardwired to think that way when you're watching The Mandalorian. When you have all of these characters are very distinctive. They're very unique. They have cool armor. They're all very cool in their own way. But you're kind of hardwired to see Mando as the main. And so when you see them all on screen, you kind of forget you're watching the Book of Boba Fett, and it's like it's Mando. Like if this were Boba Fett and Finnick, and they were doing their things against like the twins, you know what I mean? Like if that were like the whole thing, that would have been different. But here, it's really strange the way they structured it, the way they had Mando be such a big part of it.
It seems like the series was like a first draft that was never really worked out or ironed
Yes,
out.
it feels like they didn't. They were just like, you know what, we got to pump this thing out. Well, people is they be hype about Boba. We've got a million other shows on the way. We'll just pump this one out quick and see what happens. Hi, Ruben.
Hey, Ruben, but it's like I was entertained by it, uh, especially so in the last three episodes. I mean, the last episode is fun, but at the same time, you're wondering like what's with the Rancor? Okay, the Rancor's on everybody's side, and then it flips out, and it's like, okay, this is a wonderful exercise in visual effects. I mean, everything looks
Oh
great,
yeah, oh yeah.
and but then
Ah,
you have the gun battles where it keeps cutting back to people in the same location, just ducking and being shot at, and it's like this is boring. And then the Cad Bane like the big eyed guy.
uh,
Uh, you
oh, I
think
have
there's going to
thoughts
be
about
more
that.
with you think there's going to be more with him, and you understand that I guess they have a history, which I don't know might have been explored in the animated shows. I don't watch them, so I'm like, oh, what's the deal with two of these guys? And then he's dead, and I'm like, oh, I didn't want him to die.
Well, they overplayed him immediately. Cad Bane was the coolest thing. Like, I, I'm not an idiot. I understand that they tried to make him as cool as possible because clearly, either it was in the comic books or in the animated shows, I don't know, but Cad Bane was clearly a very very cool character. So the fact that they bring him like into the live action world was something huge. And immediately in that first episode, you're like, okay, he's really cool. He's doing, they're doing the Western thing where like, he's holding his gun and everything. But then in the second episode where he is, they do that like three more times, and like they're so insistent on showing you how cool he is that it's like, okay, I get it now. You've made him uncool because you've been so insistent, and then he dies, or like maybe, I don't know. We don't know. No
Maybe not
one's
though.
ever really
Nobody's
gone,
yeah, no
but
one's ever really gone.
but it's like so underwhelming the way they kind of wasted this guy. I don't know. I find it really bizarre.
And and
And I'm
the
sorry,
third,
I just need
yeah,
to
go
say
ahead.
this about the VFX you're talking about. I do think that the VFX are strong overall, but there were many more instances where I was like, "Eesh, that doesn't look as polished as, like, say, The Mandalorian is." Because when The Mandalorian comes out, there is not a single thing that you can complain about. And if there is, it would be the dark saber. It looks a bit weird sometimes, but I think that's just the way that we would, like, our brain wouldn't be able to compute the dark saber anyway, if it were
Well,
real.
I think both
But
the Mandalorian and this show do a great job with the combination of practical
oh yes, that's it.
and CGI. But I think in this show things look a little more cartoony, and overall, I think this show in particular seems like it's like the 12-year-old me would have no complaints about this. I would have loved this show, like, but as an adult, and coming off the Mandalorian, which is the most, and the most violent occurrence in this entire show is the Mandalorian like chopping a guy in half on a table, and they film it in such a clever way you don't see anything really, but you get what happened. But there's logic problems in the show throughout. Like Cobb Vanth, is it Cobb Vanth? Timothy Oliphant's character, he
Mm,
gets like shot in the shoulder. They say okay he's dead, but then he's in the back to tank in the post
mm.
credits. So like he got shot in the shoulder and you didn't know if he was dead or not. That seemed weird because it seemed like he clearly didn't die. And it's like they changed their mind about something or like tried to manipulate the audience by having the character
Mm,
say think he was dead, which is totally illogical because if he was dead, they wouldn't like hours and hours later wouldn't have in the back to tank. And another thing,
I
uh,
okay.
the suit. Okay, he they have this whole thing. One of the worst parts of this whole season, I think, that actually I think I just skipped over. I think it was the one part I was like, I don't want to watch this again. It was when him and Fennec go to the Sarlacc pit to look for his armor and stuff, and I'm like, uh okay, sure, you could say that he doesn't have the memory, like he was disoriented. He suffered a blow to the head, but who are the little guys? They took it from him, and he was aware of this. So like he should remember, but I guess you can argue that he doesn't. But I think that whole thing, the whole journey into the Sarlacc pit, like okay, you're poking your ship down, and you don't like. What are you doing? Like that's what like a lot of times, not a lot of times, but it was one of
Well,
these instances
do
where
you
I'm
think
like, why
that's
are you
fan
doing this,
service?
Boba? And why isn't Fennec slapping you on the side of the head and
Do you
telling you
think
not to
that is
do it?
do you think that is fan service? Like that specific thing, like with the
It might
Sarlacc
be
pit and
some,
everything.
yeah, it might be a desperate attempt at something, but it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
What was I gonna
You
say?
could argue, that he doesn't remember, and that's why he's going back. But like,
Oh
it
my
seemed
god.
like wasted time on screen. It seemed like wasted special effects. It was an exciting action sequence, but like when that is all that it is, and
Okay, well,
there's no spine to it. It's not good.
there's a lot of things in this show, in like the small 7 episodes that we get. There's a lot of things that kind of feel like they're there just to pad it out, which is weird. It's like they literally have no like they could have had like a 3 episode miniseries about how he comes back and he's the what do they call it, the day, what is it, he comes back and he wants to be
Does
like the lead,
Darjin or something like
the
that?
daemon,
No,
I don't know, the
um,
fucking leader here.
the boss, the
Yeah,
Godfather.
the boss man, exactly. No, but they could have had a, I don't
I
know.
want to rule with respect. It's like, no, dude, this is Star Wars land. It's harsh. It's harsh territory. You can't. And I think a lot of people just expected Boba Fett to be a
Okay,
badass because the Mandalorian is a badass.
wait a minute. Okay, let's try and structure this thing. The season is, we could basically break down the season into like the 7 episodes there into like three pretty distinct things. There's like the first thing, which is introducing, I guess, like the current state of I guess Tatooine, or what is it, Mos Espa, and there's the flashbacks with Boba. The second part is everything that doesn't concern Boba Fett in any way. It's got like Luke Skywalker and Grogu and the Mando and all of that. And then at the end, there's a big finale, which is the big boss fight. We bring everyone, all of these random collection of characters, like the Moped Gang. Everyone comes together and they fight these bad guys. That's basically what it is. Those are
I
the
didn't.
three kind of segments. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't like the end at all. I quite enjoyed all of the like Luke and Grogu, and I quite enjoyed all of the Mando stuff, though I feel like it's completely out of place. And the beginning is the strongest part for me of the season.
Yeah, I would say the first and the second episode are pretty good.
Mm.
There's a monster fight when Boba takes down that thing that comes out of the sand. That looks so realistic.
Oh yeah,
It was very impressive. And then you had the train heist
that was really cool.
in episode 2, which was great. It falls off a bit in episode
It almost
3, I
felt like
think.
a bit of a Firefly thing.
I
Every
don't.
time there's a train heist.
I've never seen it.
Oh
I've
really?
never watched it.
Well, every time I see a train heist, it reminds me of like Firefly, because they have like a train heist in the desert, but it's like sci-fi western kind of. So it reminded me of that.
The Pike Syndicate and the Spice didn't care about that at all. Like I'm like I don't. The motivations I can see, but I don't agree with. Like I don't. Like Boba, you could be doing other things, dude. Like I don't know. I didn't have any expectations for the show. Like I didn't know how it was going to play out. I'm not like one of these people's like Boba Fett. Boba Fett. To me, he's a background character in the Star Wars movies. I'm a casual fan, so like I haven't seen the animated shows. Don't know if he shows up in those or not. Does he? I don't know.
I don't know. I
Uh,
haven't. I'm not
I know.
interested in anything animated from like Star Wars as it
I
stands. I just.
I did know about Cat Bane, but I mean
Yes,
it's
but
like
there are like characters that you know about, like Ahsoka Tano. Before she shows up anywhere
yeah.
in live action, you've heard about this character. You know what I mean? It's like it's hard to kind of like dodge these big characters, especially considering people have been theory crafting online for so many years about like the new trilogies, etc. They're like, oh, they got to bring this character in, so you're aware of certain characters, right?
You were right. Like they could have taken this story and condensed it to a 3 episode 60 to 70 minute per episode thing.
Oh yeah,
And I think it might have gone down better because for one, you don't have to film 7 episodes. I understand why they want to do a series, so they want to have a certain amount of episodes. And for them to come out and say, "Oh, Boba Fett is only 3 episodes," but if you say, "But they're feature length," like it's like a mini
Mm,
series, but I don't know if, but there is some
like a
padding there. Like
Sherlock kind of
sometimes
thing.
conversations go on too long, and like things are lingered on too long. I didn't like anything about. I was willing to give them a chance. The Vespa gang, um, but after a while, anytime they went, like when Fennec gets modified, I get that that's a thing in the Star Wars world, but
Mm,
the Gen Z techno way they approach it,
yeah,
where it's like a tattoo parlor, and it's like
no, that doesn't work for me.
it felt awkward.
Like, and the thing is, I'm not so like jaded that I'm against this kind of aesthetic and this kind of vibe. I just don't think it suits. I don't think it suits Star Trek, and I don't think it suits Star Wars. I think it works well for like Altered Carbon. You know what I mean? If you give me this kind of stuff and like Altered Carbon, I think that's fine. I think it suits the kind of like the world that they live in, um, because everyone's kind of like a modified douchebag prick. You know what I mean? Like, and they're all like cyberpunky. But here, it almost feels out of place to have people do this. But then, like, we have seen people be modified and etc. I think that's what I wanted to say earlier. By the way, I think they want to do a Fennec thing with Oliphant, Timothy Oliphant there. Like, that's the whole thing. They're gonna modify him and what have you, and so that they're like keeping him alive in the back tank to be able to
Mm.
modify him. I think what they wanted to say is
For a shoulder wound.
he's as close to death as Fennec was. You know what I mean? So he's like he could be considered dead, but the other genius guy with his welding materials can like fix him up. I guess he's nearly dead.
There's a the show is fun, and it's satisfying for me toward the end, but at the same time, it's dumb and it's childish, and things don't make sense that I think like younger viewers would kind of just overlook and be like, "Oh, whatever." And it does, like I said earlier, it does seem like this was playing it very safe, almost to its detriment, for not being as hard. I know my expectations came from other people's expectations about Boba Fett, which was like, oh, a show about Boba Fett. Now we're really going to get some hardcore kind of
Yes,
badass
this
action.
is what's so bizarre. So for as long as I've cared about Star Wars, which is not that long, like I watched my first Star Wars movie, I was like 20, some shit like that, so I didn't
Mm.
really care. Um, for as long as I've cared about Star Wars and watched it, people have talked about Boba Fett. Ah, he's so cool. They'll bring him back. He's only been in like 3 scenes. He's had one line of dialogue, but everyone wants Boba Fett. But the thing you know about him is Boba Fett is like this absolute like beast of a killer, right? Like he's a bounty hunter. He goes out there. He has these like amazing fights and shit. And you would think that when like because for years and years and years there've been rumors about Boba Fett show, Boba Fett movie, Boba Fett. There was supposed to be. I think Boba Fett was one of the original standalone movies that were planned. It's like, okay, so you would expect it to really be just like a bounty hunter thing. And then there's also you just talked about younger audiences. It's like Boba Fett is a character from the original trilogy. So no one really young cares about these characters, considering most of the people that you talk to now, like most of the younger people, they say that the best Star Wars trilogy is the prequels. Like they
Uh,
they they've grown
I
up
don't
and
know.
lived with the
Well,
prequels. It's like who's Boba Fett, the
did
character, supposed to
I gotta cut you off there,
appeal
bud,
to?
because this misconception that only young people like the prequels, you got to realize now the prequels are 23 years old.
Fair enough.
So a lot of these prequel lovers are are like people in their 20s and 30s at this
No,
point.
no, that's fair.
I think with Disney Plus in the past 2 almost 3 years, 2 or 3 years now, 3 years I guess,
Mm.
almost. Uh, a lot of kids, because they have the CG enhanced original trilogy, and that was mainly done. I think a lot of it was like George wanted like to reinvigorate it in the sense that like he wanted to make modern children like it, and it fooled me because I went and saw all three in theaters in the theater, and I mean I liked them, but I was like, all the CG additions uh, don't make it better; they actually make it worse. They enhance some areas of it, like for example, Empire Strikes Back is the best remastered edition because it's the
Okay.
one that's the least messed with, and almost all of the enhancements in Empire Strikes Back are to its benefit.
Okay.
You get A New Hope, it's just CG laden crap, and you get like there's a musical sequence in Return of the Jedi which looks very very bad in the original movie. I get it why he would want to remove it, but the whole like rubbery CG integrated into an 80s movie just doesn't work. But I think kids now, they don't give a shit. So they're watching this stuff and they're like, they can, it looks new enough. I mean, those movies don't look that old, especially if you watch them, in their current state where they're like all cleaned up and stuff. So I think they can connect all of this now. And it doesn't matter in which time what was made. Like these kids now can watch the prequels, the original trilogy in chronological order if they want.
It's all
Or
old for them. Is that what you're saying?
it's all, yeah, it's at this point for the little kids it is all old, but it's good enough visually that it's very engaging and entertaining because
So
that's what it is. It's a lot of it's an exercise in special effects. One of the reasons I loved the Return of the Jedi when I first saw it on TV was like it had like creatures and Muppets and glowy swords and stuff. Like it was all of that like visual stuff
it's all that
that I didn't give a shit
pizzazz.
about this. I didn't give a shit about the story. I didn't know like why Leia was getting Han out of the carbonite and like who Luke was. I didn't know any of this shit. I was just like, this is cool visually because it's like creatures and
Mm.
fights and sci-fi out there shit. And I guess
My question
nowadays,
still stands though,
yeah,
in the sense that like Boba Fett the character, who cares about this guy? Only old people, right? Only
it
only
seems
people that have seen the original trilogy when they came out in theaters. They are the people that got hype about Boba Fett and made Boba Fett a thing. But this show is not made for them at all. And
I
maybe
think
I'm
if you
speaking out of line because I'm not that person. I'm not concerned by that. But it's
I,
weird.
I think it's more likely that if you're introduced to Star Wars recently and you're watching the original trilogy, that Boba Fett won't mean anything to you.
No, I don't think so.
Not
Yeah.
not not like back in the day when he was he showed up in the Christmas special in an animated sequence, and that's what got people hyped for the character. And then he shows up in 1980 in The Empire Strikes Back, so people were already kind of hyped on him because of the special, and then he became this kind of legendary background character. And if you look at the way he goes out in Return of the Jedi, it's pretty pathetic and
Mm.
funny. And it's like
But
I never
he
took him
became he
seriously as
became
a
like
character
a
anyway. So
it became like a cult kind of phenomenon, I
yeah.
guess. But
And then
for
what the
but for people that are not the audience for this show or the intended audience for this show, it's bizarre.
their expectations of Boba Fett would be nil. Like they wouldn't know what to expect, and they just take it for what it is. If they were expecting that Boba Fett would be like the Mandalorian, they would also be disappointed because the Mandalorian is much more badass. And like I would more afraid. I'm like in a personal situation, I'd be more afraid of Mando than I would Boba
Oh,
Fett.
absolutely.
I
On
think
the other hand,
Boba Fett is very gentle. I could talk him down.
on the other hand, that is an interesting point you're making because that's one of the things that I quite enjoyed with the show. I quite enjoyed because the guy's not a Mandalorian, right?
No,
I quite enjoyed the fact that Boba Fett was like really good with animals, like with wildlife. I enjoyed the way they kind of tried to blend in Maori culture, Tim Werner's culture um into the show and into like kind of like the people, the Tusken Raiders that he was with. I liked that whole kind of there's a spirituality, I guess, to his experience and to the story that he's living, or at least in the first 3 episodes. And I quite enjoyed that take. I think that was strong. I'm not sure that's what people were expecting when they were doing Boba Fett, but I like it. I don't understand, however, why he has such a strong emotional like attachment or bond to Mos Espa, to Tatooine. I don't understand why like he has to fix this place like he's the Flash trying to fix friggin'
I
Central
I
City
think
there.
the
Like, I just
motivation
don't
is
get
he
it.
just doesn't want he doesn't want the Pikes to take over, and he has a personal vendetta against them anyway.
Okay.
Like, but it see, I don't mind like the gentle, softer side of the character. It's just there's not many moments where I don't want him to be angry or anything, but he just seems a little too docile. Actually,
Are they
one of one
playing?
of
Are
one
they
of
playing into the fact that maybe he's a bit older and they don't want him to be doing too many fight scenes? So you have Fennec. Well, I mean,
one of the
she's getting pretty old too, actually. But I mean, she seems
one
more
of
in shape than him,
one
maybe.
one of the best sequences in the show stems from one of the worst. It's when he wakes up in the Bacta tank and Chrysanthemum, is that his name? Chrysant the Wookiee
Oh, okay. Big gray Wookiee man.
Caravan
Yeah,
Caravan
what? Caravan.
Chrysanthemum.
I'll just call him Caravan. That's fine.
Uh,
I don't know what his fucking name is, but he's just
oh, Chrysanthemum, yeah.
right, Chrysanthemum. That's it.
So and he's just kind of throwing Boba Fett around, and this whole thing about this Wookiee can just like tear people apart left, right, and center, and it's just this stupid game of just Tamara Morrison getting thrown around in his diaper, and then directly after it, the Hutts are like, "Oh, we're sorry. We just sent this guy to kill you. Now we're sorry."
Yes.
And on top of that, we have a Rancor as a gift for you, and they're like, I guess I understand that they were probably like scared at this point. They're like, yeah, we don't even want to fight for it anymore because the Pikes are scary. So we're just gonna like be nice to Boba for some reason and give him a gift.
Mm.
Okay, sure. And then the Rancor with Danny Trejo, that whole thing where they're in the pit, they're in the Rancor quarters or whatever. The Rancor's sleeping, and Danny Trejo's explaining like the Rancor is a pit bull almost.
Mm.
They're very emotionally complex creatures and all this, and Boba's really happy and like I loved all that. I was like, where's this gonna go?
Mm.
And I'm glad that the Rancor came back into play, but that kind of got weird. And why didn't he use a ship to do? A lot of people point this out. Actually, it's not just me. It's why doesn't he come in with the ship and wreck shop? I guess probably doesn't want to hurdle a lot of collateral damage, maybe. But
Yeah, they don't want to pull
there,
a,
there are
they don't want to
tactical
destroy
decisions that don't make any sense.
they
Like
don't
I
want to
don't know.
destroy this whole city.
I mean, it's getting destroyed anyway.
Yeah, they unleashed the fucking Rancor
But
on it.
the animation on the
Um,
Rancor in the last
actually,
episode was spectacular. But yeah, I take the good with the bad, and for this show, it is one of those shows that could take it or leave it. Like I wouldn't care if I saw these characters again. I would like to see them in other shows, like, but I don't want everything to be like Ahsoka, Luke, Grogu, Mando, and Boba and Fennec, and like add extra, like Cobb Vanth, and like, show me something completely different. Maybe I don't know. There are other shows like
okay,
the guy from
so
Rogue One. The guy from Rogue One is getting his own show.
the guy from Rogue One. Who's this? Oh, okay, the pilot guy. No,
Yeah,
yeah, him. Okay, yeah, I know what you mean. No, I did see like someone argue online. Someone was saying like I won't be able to quote this exactly because I don't remember exactly how he said it, but the person was saying that Star Wars is a shared and connected universe. It makes sense, and this is in regards to like having a whole Mandalorian episode. It makes sense for the shows to be connected like this, and for them to like have like interchangeable like characters, I guess, that come in and out of different shows. And it's like I understand that, I see that, and I actually think that's quite valid in a sense, especially if you want your shows to like kind of evolve as a connected and shared universe. It's just that I really do feel like each show, if you want them to have their own I guess uniqueness or particular identity, you need to make them different enough. And for most of the Book of Boba Fett, it kind of felt like the Mandalorian cheap, or like kind of like a Mandalorian light.
discount Mandalorian.
Yeah, that's right. It was like Kirkland Mandalorian, um, and then you went and put the Mandalorian in there. You put these other characters. You brought back the Luke and the Grogu, which were like a big thing from the Mandalorian. It's very bizarre the way they handled it.
And what's funny is about episode 5 with Mandalorian is the best directed and best written episode. It's like, why couldn't the episodes about Boba Fett be structured in this way? And as an episode of Boba Fett, you could argue that it's not very good because it has really nothing to do
It's not an episode of
with the
Boba
main
Fett.
storyline until the very
Hmm.
end. And that whole sequence where he's flying the old prequel style fight or whatever it is. I mean, I thought that it was like one of the best sequences I've seen in Star Wars. I'm like,
That was
just
really
from
good.
like a visual, just watching a ship fly around, I was like, this is fucking awesome.
So, like, to illustrate this in like Star Trek, because we talk about Star Trek, like there are episodes where with Deep Space Nine and the Next Generation like share the screen, right? But you're watching, like, say you're watching a TNG episode, and so a few characters transfer. You got Dr. Bashir, he's coming in and he's talking with Data, that kind of stuff, right? But it still
Yeah,
feels like a TNG episode. They've just injected some characters from another show, and it makes you feel like these shows are connected. It's not completely taken over. It's not like you did a TNG episode, but there was no TNG character. All right, there is no Enterprise. There's nothing. It's just all on Deep Space Nine, and it's all about Quark. Because that's a Deep Space Nine episode. It's just like you
yeah.
filmed a Deep Space Nine episode, except you didn't have an episode to put out when you were releasing TNG, so you dumped it in there. That's not what they did, or at least that's not what they did during TNG. And this is what they did here. It's almost as if they had filmed the first episode, or even like the first two with like the Grogu stuff. It's almost as if they filmed 2 episodes for like the Mandalorian, and they were like, "Oh my goodness, we really need to pad out this Boba Fett thing. Let's just."
I don't think that's what happened though.
I don't think so.
But I think
I give them more credit than that, but
I
it
think
feels like it.
there may have been a course correction some way through, because like this is part of the reason why I feel like it's entertaining, but it's disjointed, because when you get into episode 3 and 4, the show becomes a little more boring, and it's weaker. It feels like a weaker show, and it's like at that point when you get to episode 4, I think it's like, when the fuck is this gonna get going? And then episode 5, boom, you get this really good Mando episode, and then the tease at the end with Grogu, and at the end I didn't even believe it. I was like, they're really gonna they're not gonna have Grogu. And then like this whole thing in the next
The
episode is like
whole episode.
Luke and fucking Grogu, and it's like,
It
wait a second.
the book
I
of
think
Grogu.
I think they emergency measures act on the plot of the show, and they said, we got to do something because isn't working out the way we want it. So the idea of Mando was probably always going to be in it, maybe Grogu too, but now we need to like fucking like ramp it up and do a
Out with the
whole
space
really
vessel.
good Mando episode. And then the very next episode, we got like Mando, we got Ahsoka, we got Grogu, we got fucking Luke Skywalker. And not only do we have Luke Skywalker, we have Luke Skywalker as basically the central character of the entire episode almost.
Yes.
Where like there's close-ups, there's a lot of dialogue, and
Yes.
it's like it's the best deep fake I've seen in anything
He's building
yet.
this. He's building the school, or he has his like giant ass
Robots.
robot things building the school, and you're like, okay, so now they're tying this into like the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Oh, we forgot to talk about. We have to mention this. General Order 66, was it?
Grogu's flashback.
Yeah, there's like Goku's flashback, which was I found that interesting, and there's also the whole other thing, and I think this happens during the Mando episode where they show like the Jedi fucking up Mandalore.
Mandalore, yeah, that's
Yeah.
episode 5.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was really well done. Like that's a great episode visually and just from a direction point of view, and the virtual sets, I suppose they are, looked so well integrated into the picture. You see the reflection. That's the greatest thing about the VR screens, is like when they're used well,
Mm.
it's nearly indistinguishable. You know, like obviously this is not a huge fucking elaborate set. Like just logistically, you know
Well, it's
it's
just
not
because
real.
your brain knows it. Like you know that. Oh well, they didn't go out and film on fucking Tatooine, or
No, I
Mandalore.
mean
Like you understand
I'm
that.
talking
So
about in particular the actually they did do a lot of outside desert shooting in the show,
mm,
but in particular the episode with the Mandalorian on that space station.
mm.
There are like long shots where and like it's very cleverly staged, where it looks like he's walking around on a real thing. The same effect a few years ago would have been achieved with green screen, would not have looked as good because you have to deal with reflections too, and they don't go through the trouble of recreating reflection. You can tell the difference basically.
It must be really good for because I saw a couple of those like behind the scenes videos that they showed, etc. It must be really
Yeah,
cool as a director to as a director, as like an art director, that kind of stuff, to be able to say like, you know what, I don't really like this big ass tree that's in the side of the shot. It's like taking away from this, so let's add this. Or
click.
say they're on like yeah, exactly. They're on like the space station. It's like this is really weird to have like this one flag over here or whatever it is. Maybe leave it, but make it like a darker blue instead of like a bright red. Oh yeah, okay, that balances out the shot.
Yep.
So that must be really cool. Really, must be really helpful, like be able to streamline the whole process though when they're filming that. I don't know how cool it is as an actor though, because you're no longer filming just on green, but you're still not necessarily in like full real sets. I don't know if that takes you out of it or whatnot. But
It all looks pretty I mean, I got to give credit to both The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, and this is because I don't watch the animated stuff, so I can't speak to that.
hmm.
But these shows marry the prequel
Oh
and
yes.
sequel and
Oh
everything in
yeah.
between. They marry all of that perfectly. So like you do get some of that goofy prequel stuff, but just not too much of it. It's like it's sprinkled in there, right? And you also get like the use of a lot of practical things as well. And sometimes the CG characters
Yes.
are animated in a way where they actually look like practical objects.
Yes. That
Uh,
does so much.
yeah,
So much to like create a bridge between both worlds. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
between the practical and the VFX, because uh, the performance is all very good. I think for the most
yeah.
part. I would say that like the Vesper Club there, that they're not the best actors, but then I don't know if it's just maybe I'm biased because I don't really like the type of characters that they are. And I think maybe it's because like the material that they were given to work with isn't necessarily the best. I don't want to comment too much on like their skill. Maybe
Did,
it's just because they were given shit
did you
things to
know
do.
that? Did you know that Ming Na Wen, who plays Fennec Shand, is
Hmm.
like she's 58.
Yeah.
She's only a couple of years younger than Tamara Morrison.
Mm.
It's like I didn't know that. I assumed she was in her late 40s, early 50s, because I remembered her from like Street Fighter way back in the day.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
like, oh, she has to be older, but like 58.
No, well, I've seen her for the past like 10 years on my screen because I've been watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, you poor thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, come on. I lived through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and so did she.
The show that was just erased from canon, like they don't even acknowledge its
Yeah, they're like,
existence.
nah, whatever, screw that. But
The,
anyway,
the, the- like the Netflix shows have more canon than Agents of
yes,
Shield.
Melinda May was amazing in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and I really liked her performance. And so, like, when I looked up, I first looked up the cast of that show when it first came out. I was like, who's he? Who's she? And I was like, oh, she's the voice for Mulan, the original Disney animated film.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh, okay. And then so she's a boss, she's a badass. She's really good at doing all these fight sequences. She's a very good actor. She knows how to be terrifying. Um, but she was already. I was like, oh my god, she looks a lot younger than what she is back then. So when they brought her into the Mandalorian, I was like, oh my goodness, really?
What
But no, she's cool. She's a badass.
the whole bar that they go to in the show, right? And you have the woman.
Yeah,
I can't remember her name. She's Jennifer Beals plays her, I think.
tailhead lady there.
Tailhead lady. I didn't. I thought there would be more with that, and when the place gets all blowed up, I was like, okay. Like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
didn't really
I think it
care.
was supposed to evoke an emotional response.
I would have.
Do you know that's an imitation of a scene from The Godfather?
Well, that's what I
It's
was going to talk about.
where there's a bomb left in, and somebody goes, "Oh, you left your,"
Okay.
and it's the same thing happens. I think it's The
Okay.
Godfather. I'm pretty sure
Well,
it's The Godfather.
I was gonna
There
talk
are,
about like Godfather slash Gotham kind of
oh god,
you know what I mean, like mafioso kind of vibes. And I was
yeah,
thinking like this kind of very adult direction for like the show could, that's what I was expecting. A few episodes in, when you kind of learn about how he's gonna try and like, I guess, clean up the streets somewhat. He's gonna push out like the rival gangs. He's gonna take control of the area, and then you're like, okay, so maybe he's gonna be like one of these very peculiar characters that on one hand he's so kind with like all of these animals and what have you, and he's so in touch with like his spirituality and nature, but then he's like ruthless as fuck and he can rip out your teeth if you mess with him, right?
yeah.
Like I thought that's where they were going with it, and I thought that like this bar would become kind of like a central stage for a lot of like very intense like suspenseful deals where he's like sitting down on one side of the table, the other one's on the other side, and it's like this business deal, is it going to go well, is it, you know, with like the mayor or people that are defending the mayor or people that he's paid. I didn't get any of that. I didn't get any of that, but
The what little expectations did have, I did expect some kind of mafiosa, kind of Soprano slash Godfather
yeah.
type of thing that was safe enough that it wasn't like R rated or anything.
Oh, okay,
But
yeah.
they didn't even go there.
Yeah,
There's
you
like
didn't
a
expect him like
conversation.
smash people's faces on glasses and then have an eye in the glass because no,
There's a
that's a
whole
Star Trek thing.
there's a whole
Sorry.
goddamn conversation with all these dudes who are like, yeah, we'll listen to you and we'll agree with you. And then Fennec's like, do you trust them? He's like, oh, I trust them to protect their own interests. And I'm like, why are you surprised when they all turned on you then?
But that was a great
There
scene,
was
but
no
like,
plan for that.
okay, before you get to the point where all of it is useless, the fact that he has like all of these different parties come around the table and they're talking, I like that. I like the
Yeah,
fact
it's
that
good,
like he shows
but
him
it
that
goes
there's a
nowhere.
threat underneath as well. And yeah, it goes nowhere. But that's kind of how the show is. The show trickled itself out of existence, right? It comes in, it's like we've made a new show, and then it just kind of it reminds you that Mandalorian exists, and then it just kind of goes away. And I know there's a big fight scene at the end, and the finale wants to be like a whole big thing, but it isn't really. It's not really that memorable.
Did you get the impression at the end with Boba Fett and Fennec? Boba Fett's like, I don't fucking like this. like, like he's kind of got this like
Yes.
attitude at the end. It's like, oh really?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. No. At the end,
sure.
it's
Oh,
almost as if they want to keep the door open for like, okay, maybe if this doesn't like, if the what else, what story are you gonna tell now?
mm.
Like on Mos Eisley here on Tatooine. Like it has to be another thing. Oh, the twins are gonna come back and try to take their. No, so it's like, okay, let's leave the door open for Boba and Fennec to go somewhere else, do something else, because that might be more interesting than just filming in the desert again. Um, so yes, there was that kind of thing where Boba's like, yeah, I don't know why we did all this. I'm not really a fan of this.
I don't want this to happen, but I think it would be hilarious if they had Mando season 3, and then all of a sudden it just cut to a side episode of Boba Fett, and it turned out to be the worst episode of the season.
Oh no, you're so mean.
Or the opposite, like Mando 3 is not as good as the last two, and then like Boba Fett comes in. Actually, no, they did that in season 2. Like that was a big highlight. Boba Fett, when he shows up in Mando season 2, he's fierce.
Oh
Like
yeah,
he's much more fierce than he is in the
he
show, and
is,
it's like what?
and
Okay,
there's a comedy as well. There's the humor as well of him like not being able to fit in the suit, that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah,
um, he is generally more like better executed in Mando than he was in Boba. But
yeah.
then that's just because I feel like this show, I can't help but shake the impression that this show was kind of rushed. I feel like they didn't have any of this planned, and they were just like, you know what? Like
It's
they have
very
other shows that have been in the
It's very
process of.
Picard season 1, but more entertaining. Where remember Michael Chabon basically admitted
Let's
that like
go better VFX. I'll give it that.
they didn't have it figured out by the end. So like you can't do that in a show. As a showrunner, you have to have all your storyboards and all your plot points and like where it's going to go and
So
how it's going to end
do you
already figured out. You can't. It's very It's very foolish to go into a show not fully knowing, and that's what it seems like with this. Like you're right. It's like it's not. It wasn't fully
I
developed.
guess the advantage that Boba Fett had over Picard is that Boba Fett could be like, we don't know how to finish the show. Let's just at least interject 2 episodes of Mando in it. Whereas
Mm.
Picard couldn't do that with Discovery. They couldn't just randomly go, oh no, let's just put some Discovery episodes in there. It's
Yeah.
like they didn't have that option. No, it kind of feels like it kind of felt unfinished. It feels like they were working on all of these other shows. Like they've got all of these thousands of shows announced. They're really working hard on them, but they're like, okay, we need to put the Boba Fett thing out first, quick. So everyone like will take one person from this team, one person from that team. You know, everyone's got like they've all of these teams for the shows that they're writing. They grab everyone from each team. They have them write this thing quick, and then put it out. I was like, oh, that's the episode that you had planned for like Grogu in Mando season 3. Let's just dump this one here. It doesn't really matter where we put it anyway.
And that's another thing too. If we're gonna go into Mando season 3 and Grogu's back again, you would have had to have watched. I know most people watch all the shows anyway.
Yeah.
But what if you didn't watch Boba Fett?
Yes.
They would probably put it in a recap, but then you'd be like, as an audience member, it's like, I gotta go watch this Boba Fett show. Figure out.
Yeah.
Like,
So I have a little. That's a nice little, I guess, sidebar that we can talk about here. And I'm gonna talk about like the Arrowverse show specifically. In the beginning, the Arrowverse shows when they did the big crossover events, you could carry on watching just one show. Like you would watch just Arrow or just The Flash, and you didn't need to watch the other shows to be able to understand the one you're watching. It is an added bonus, or like it adds to your appreciation of the universe if you want to watch them both. But then eventually it started becoming things like, where did you get that piece of technology? When did she get this power or whatever? It's because someone from like the science division in the Flash gave someone a weapon, in Arrow. But you have to see that episode of the Flash, so it's kind of like I don't really like that. I feel it kind of forces your hand into watching these, and I know that's maybe like a good marketing ploy, but I find it kind of strange. And if they start doing this with these live action shows, because there will come a point where I won't want to watch them all. There's too much stuff to watch. And I can't be invested in every single live action Star Wars show that comes out, especially if they put out 12 like they've announced, right? I don't want them I don't want them to force me into watching specific shows just to understand why characters have like grown or evolved. And I don't want to fall into the thing where I end up having to watch just recaps online, because a lot of people do that now. They just watch a recap of the show instead of watching the actual show. And that takes away from like the art of television as well, like the art of making the episodes. If people no longer appreciate the actual work that's put into it, they just want to know like the story beats.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's a lesson learned for them. I mean, I'm sure they've taken the criticism of Boba Fett, and the thing is, it's not the disaster some people make it out to be. Some
No.
people are like, I know a couple of people online who are just like furious over it. I'm like, I get it if you're like the hardcore Star Wars fan that didn't like the way Cad Bane turned out. Like a lot of people were pissed off about that. And I'm like, I have no history with the character, so I'm like, okay, but I did like him. I wanted to see more of him, and I wanted to see him team up with fucking Boba Fett at the end. And I thought that was going to happen for a second. I was like, no, that's just wishful thinking. Like maybe Cad Bane had secretly had like resentment or a vendetta toward the Pikes or something, and it's like, I'm actually going to betray them and help you. It's like Boba Fett's like, oh, well, good on you. You're part of my team now. And that would have been like, I would have been looking forward to the next season. I'm like, oh, Cad Bane's like on the team now. I don't know if that's within his character's nature to do that, so I don't know. So I don't know. I did want to see more
Well,
of
his
him, though.
nature is deceased now, isn't it?
Well, it's Star Wars land, so
Yeah.
apparently Cobb Vanth got shot in the shoulder. His partner died. His partner got shot 40 times, right? So clearly he's dead. The people come out of the bar. They don't even look at the dead guy. They're all about Cobb Vanth, who seemed to have only get hit on the side or the shoulder. It seemed like a superficial wound, not superficial, but not non-life threatening. And then the dude, it seemed like
Is about to
it was
scratch.
it was two different drafts of a script that were stuck together, and like, oh, this contradicts this in the same episode. So Horatio Sands, I think, is the actor who plays the alien. He's like, oh, Cobb Vanth is dead. And I was like, I remember thinking, like, no, he's not. Like, why are you lying? Like, why? I thought he was lying for a reason. I
Why?
thought he was actually lying for a
Oh,
reason.
okay. You think he was trying to manipulate him or play some mind games or something?
But then that didn't make any sense to me. And then in the post credit, which somebody brought to my attention later, I didn't even see it. He's in the back to tank, and I'm like,
Okay, just
what?
as a general rule now,
What? What's going on?
you have to wait for post-credit scenes. Not every episode, but if you're watching on Disney Plus, just assume the finale has a post-credit of any show.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Just assume. And then of course, like Rick and Morty has like post-credits on every episode now. Like it's become a thing now. We've become hardwired to sit through these credits and wait for that scene. Generally speaking, though, I do sit through the Mando and Boba Fett credits because we all look at the artwork and the music's cool. I like the
Yeah.
music, which is a strong point. The music is very solid
And
throughout the show.
and on almost every technical level, it's superior to
Oh
most
yes,
shows.
absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
I think it's a combination of high expectations because you have like a prestige show like The Mandalorian, which has two excellent seasons under its belt, and then you have this, which on a technical level is doing a lot of things right, but the story is a bit of a head scratcher. Let's just sum it up that way.
Yeah,
It's not put together as well as it should have been.
I don't mean to be that person that's
Yeah,
always like, because online, often people online, me included, will say, the writing is not good, and we'll kind of blame the writers, and it feels easy to blame, oh, yeah, we're blaming the writers, but in this particular instance, I feel like on a technical level, as you said, I couldn't really find anything to really complain about. Like, it's very well directed. Everyone's, giving good performances. It's well lit. The VFX are great. The sets are fantastic. Just like the general aesthetics are very, very good. I like the music. It really is the story that they tried to tell, or at least the execution of that story that didn't really come together too well. And that's what's disappointing. Which brings us to the one and only rating system, because I need your opinion here now on this. Is it absolute bullshit? Is it true greatness? Is it something in between?
it's above average.
Above average.
It's right below all right and good because
Oh wow.
if it had a more if it made more sense, like if just the story just in general made more sense. The structure is wonky. I'll forgive that, but it's just like the head scratching moments, like the logic of like Cobb Vanth's death and Boba Fett in the Sarlacc pit, and like why isn't he as badass as I thought? Why doesn't it have the mafioso thing? And like I said, expectations weren't much. I just thought it was going to be an underground mafia kind of thing set in the Star Wars world, and it was visually striking enough for the most part. But then those last three episodes, especially episode 5, made it good enough so that I wouldn't be calling it mediocre or bad. So average or above average, I think, is a fair assessment on my part.
Well, I was gonna go with like, all right. Now you're making me wonder if that's too high.
No, that's
I mean, because it's all right, right? I guess. I'm gonna go with like maybe a low all right.
a marginal all right.
A marginal all right. a week all right. It's not. It's definitely not good. Like, it's not a show that I would definitely strongly recommend. Whereas like The Mandalorian is something that I think is just like, okay, they have exceeded every single expectation. I am blown away by how good they've made this Star Wars show. Whereas this, I'm kind of just like,
If
Hmm.
I was 11 or 12, I would think the show was good or great.
Okay.
But my more discerning, prickly attitude doesn't allow me
Yeah,
to
the
enjoy
bitterness of
things
us.
as much as I should.
The bitterness of us is okay. Well, I'm gonna go with all right. You're giving it an above average. It gives it it gives it, I guess, a rating of somewhat not quite average. There, it's a little higher, but it's lacking. It's a show that's lacking, sadly.
I almost feel bad for criticizing it because it does seem
Look,
like it's geared toward a younger audience, and it almost feels like it's not for me. Mando feels like it's more for me uh, than Boba
we
Fett. But you
we
got the
gotta give it
Grogu kitty shit too that they inject
we
into
gotta
it for
give it
cuteness
credit
sake.
though. We did have fun, right? Like it was entertaining enough. It's not like we came out of the show or we wanted to stop it or like it was tedious to watch through. It was like sometimes there were decisions and sometimes overall when you're looking at the end product, you're kind of like, why did they do this? Or why did they structure it this way?
It's
But it
a
was
Star Trek.
entertaining.
It's a Star Trek Discovery of Star Wars shows for me.
Oh my
Like
god.
it's
I
above
think it's the,
average.
no,
It's
I think
above
it's the
average to
Picard.
all right,
I
and
think Picard
I
is the
would
better
take it or leave
analogy.
it. Yeah. Well, Picard. Yeah, and well, Picard
It
is. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I didn't mean. I kind of didn't mean to say it was like bad. Like I really don't like the first season of Picard. So if that was an absolute bullshit thing, I would probably put it as bad, just
no,
plain
no,
old bad.
really
Yeah.
that low? Oh, that's interesting.
Picard season 1? Oh yeah. Even when I rewatched it, I liked it more than I did before,
Hmm.
but I still had to skip over some of that bullshit that I can't stand in the show, which I
You're
won't
talking
get
about
into here, but
the
yeah.
Narek shit. Okay.
No, the synth stuff
Oh,
with the flashes and anything to do with like anyway. Episode 5 I can't even it was a hard one to get through.
Raised by Wolves is handling synthetics and AIs in a way that I haven't quite seen yet before. Um,
Even that is wonky.
oh no, granted, but from season one. But see, Raised by Wolves is conceptual enough, and like I guess it's abstract enough to be able to
Yeah.
permit itself to be wonky.
It's not a it makes more sense than some other sci-fi out there, but it's still that kind of
This is
sci-fi where
Westworld. Westworld became like the worst thing in the world once it hit season three. There,
I don't know. It's a weird season, I would admit, but I don't think it's entirely bad. It
really?
is it is a strange
Well, you were talking about like existential questionings and that kind of stuff. I remember when we were talking about it back then.
yeah. Westworld season 4 is coming this year. Let's see if that.
Mm. Is that the end of it? Are they gonna just end it? Let's end
Um,
everything. Let's finish all of these shows. Start new ones. Let's get rid of the
Strange New
current
Worlds.
wave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stranger Things. Let's get rid of that too. Like all of these shows,
Well, that's ending after 2 seasons.
they've
Two more
outlived their
seasons.
welcome.
It's already been canceled.
It was supposed to
No,
be canceled after season four. It was supposed to be four only. That was what there was
no,
the originally
no,
announced to be.
but they're doing season 4 and 5, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then the kids are going to be 30.
Because the kids are no longer kids at this point. You're gonna have to do like a flash forward or something.
You're gonna have to
Time.
de-age them awkwardly, like they did in It Chapter 2, where they don't look real. It's like, why am I watching this? Why am I watching weird, boggle-headed CG kids?
Okay, It Chapter 2 shouldn't have existed, to be
It
fair.
Chapter 2 is one of the worst movies of the last 10 years,
It's,
which is funny because It Chapter 1 is one of the best horror movies in the last 10
yeah,
years.
I agree. It Chapter 1 was amazing. Well, just it. And then when the second one comes out, you're like, oh no, why did
Oh
anyway?
god.
All right, we've devolved into speaking about nonsense
Yeah.
as we do when we end these conversations. The Book of Boba Fett. Like it, hate it, you tell me. Leave a comment, people. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button, as one must. Subscribe. Tell everyone to subscribe. We talk about shows all the time here. We're gonna start doing a little more streams, I think. Or at least I am. I don't have the time to film and edit videos at the moment. So like having 1 hour conversations is actually way shorter than the time it takes to write, film, edit.
Well, doing live streams are the easiest things YouTubers can do
Yes,
because
it's
it's done. Once you're done, it's
it's the
done.
laziest possible type of content for people out there. So if you follow people that just stream, know that. No, I'm kidding. We have a great time. We should come back and talk about Peacemaker. I want to talk about Peacemaker. I think I have more positive things to say about Peacemaker than Boba Fett.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Although I will end it on this. We sound like bitter old men, but we did still have fun watching Boba Fett.
Yeah,
Like,
if there was a season 2, I probably would wait until it's all done and then binge it.
oh, okay. You just changed the way you
It
consume.
would. I wish I could do that with some Star Trek. Like weekly, it's a bit of a drag. But I find the rewatching when it's all said and done, it flows much better because it is like Discovery,
Well, you could
especially so
wait.
heavily serialized. I could, but I don't have the patience, and I'm
Yeah.
only going to get spoiled for it anyway. So
Yeah. I mean, is it really important you get spoiled like what the things are in Discovery?
What? Oh,
This huge affair.
10C. Ooh, 10C is a blob of something.
I'll
Wow.
leave you on this very very poignant thing. Considering I no longer am obligated to release an episode a week because that's unreasonable. I cannot do that. I no longer feel forced to watch episodes of Star Trek as they come out weekly, and so I found myself completely forgetting to watch this week's Discovery. I watched Erased by Wolves, I watched Peacemaker, I watched a whole bunch of things, and still haven't gotten around to watch Discovery because
I haven't missed much.
I've discovered that I was forcing myself to watch it for the sake of writing down my notes and doing the discussions if I could attend. So that's kind of sad. But yeah. On that note, what is it? Is it live long and prosper? Is there like a way of saying goodbye in like in Tuscan? Do we know that? Okay, that seems valid enough. All right, everyone. See you next time.
See ya.